What's up, guys? Coach Steve here, and welcome back to another episode of the Challenge podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined with Max's first runner-up, Tim Coakley. Tim, welcome to the Challenge podcast.
Thanks, Steve.
Mate, I'm so excited to spend a little bit of time chatting with you again on the Challenge podcast, because I shouldn't just be welcoming you, I should be welcoming you back to the Challenge podcast, because we did that podcast a year ago. But mate, listen, it's been just a couple of days since you found out that not only were you in the top 10, you made it in the top 3, coming second place in the Max's Challenge. How has the past couple of days been for you?
Oh, a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest. I honestly didn't expect to come top 10 this time around because of a second entrance into the challenge. I just assumed that potentially it'd be given to newer challenges, and it wasn't really ever a goal of mine to get top 10 or be, I guess, noticed for my results. It was more of an individual thing for me, and I'm very thankful for being acknowledged for what I achieved in 12 weeks, but I also know that a lot of people went through a lot of ups and downs through this challenge themselves, and they all should be awarded. It's not really about the top 10 or the top 3 for me. It was just about getting back to a lower body fat percentage before summer and keep training hard as I do.
I like it. It's very humbling. Tim, would you like to start by telling us a little bit about yourself, maybe where you're from and what you do for work?
So obviously my name's Tim. I'm 36 years old. I have 2 children, Emily, who's 7, and Isabel, who is 3. My wife, Tara, did the challenge as well, and she got awesome results as well. I'm a school teacher by trade, high school. I teach teenage boys, and my subject area is biology. So obviously this challenge and knowing about the human body in some detail is obviously I tweak a little bit of things as a scientist, so I always try and change things here and there, and that's what I was aiming for in this particular challenge. I had different goals from the first challenge. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Yeah, no, I love it. Mate, look, let's start by talking about why. So this is, I guess, the second challenge that you've done formally with the Max's Challenge. I'm sure you've been physically active and everything in between those challenges. But could you tell us a little story about maybe why you chose to sign up again for the September challenge?
I guess from my perspective, when I did the September challenge in 2019 was because as you would know, I had a major health scare in 2018, and I've had 2 bone marrow transplants. And prior to that, I was training quite regularly and quite physically active, and I played AFL for close to 20 years. And obviously, I lost all that in a pretty quick, detrimental 6 months in 2018. Slowly bounced back and then did the 2019 challenge and got some pretty good results considering from where I'd come from and what my body had gone through. And then I was an ambassador in the January 2020 challenge. So obviously continually trained and supported people through that particular challenge. And obviously at the beginning of the year, people are highly motivated to make changes. And then I continued to train throughout the year, albeit during restrictions. Obviously, New South Wales wasn't anything compared to Victoria, but still managed to get some training in. And I kept training. However, obviously, the diet wasn't as strict. Well, not necessarily strict, but it wasn't as regimented as I'd like, and got to probably cut corners here and there. And so my wife and I said, well, we got awesome results in the September 2019 challenge. So we signed up for the 2020 challenge, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. Oh, beautiful. Tell me a little bit how your goals may have changed between those 2 challenges. So you've kind of mentioned how in 2018 you had a little bit of a health scare. 2019 was kind of the rebooting of your fitness journey. But what was 2020 like? How were your goals different to 2019?
So in the 2019 challenge, I did the lean and ripped challenge to get back that physical fitness and obviously a little bit more cardio and lean and ripped. And then this particular challenge, I did size and strength. So probably prior to signing up to this challenge, I was trying to build size and strength prior to that. So obviously there's a number of different methods to training and blood flow and all that type of thing. And I was doing probably body specific training. So, a chest day, a back day, a leg day, that type of thing. And starting off with a primary exercise of, up to 10 sets of certain body parts. And then obviously I continued into this particular challenge with size and strength in mind, but that goal slightly changed because my main goal for this challenge was to maintain mass and drop body fat percentage. It was sort of more of a scientific experiment. Mm-hmm. And I've read a number of your posts in the forum in the 2019 challenge and the 2020 challenge saying it's obviously a very difficult juggling act to do both, because I think it's a common question that a lot of challenges ask, I want to drop body fat percentage but not lose muscle mass and that type of thing. So that was my goal. And I had no idea as to how hard it would be to actually drop body fat percentage when it's getting measured. And I know we had a conversation about those measurements not necessarily being entirely accurate. So oblivious to me, I thought, 5 or 6% body fat, but that's obviously extremely hard to get to. And I got down to about 9%. So in those photos, on the Friday, I had it measured again. According to the machine, it was 9%. However, I don't know whether or not I was leaner or not, because you could get probably a DEXA scan. It could be different. So my primary goal was to maintain mass, but you can see by my results, I ended up still dropping 8 kilos. My strength was definitely, compared from 2019 to 2020, I'm definitely lifting a lot heavier, and my form, I'd say, is a lot better. Even though my goal was to maintain mass, I probably didn't necessarily achieve that. Even my goal was to get down to ridiculous body fat percentage, unbeknownst to me that's very, very hard. I still managed to get down pretty low, and probably when the photos were taken on the Sunday, I might have been 8.9%. Who knows?
Yeah, look, let's just unpack that a little bit, because you kind of mentioned probably the most common goal that I hear from guys who are doing the challenge or who are wanting to get fit. They usually say something along the lines of, I want to build muscle and lose weight and get fit and healthy and all these other things. And like the common one, I want to build muscle and lose fat at the same time.
Yes.
Which can be done. Right? It can be done. Really difficult, really challenging, because I guess they have contrasting goals, right? To build muscle and to gain more body mass, we need to eat at an energy surplus, right? And
yes.
To lose fat or to lose body mass, we need to be at an energy deficit, right? So it's really hard to do a little bit of both, because I guess we kind of half-ass both approaches when we're probably better off doing a phase of like bulking, which is common words used for guys use. I'm going to bulk and then I'm going to cut, right? I'm going to go through a building phase and then like a shredding phase. And it sounds like through that time between 2019 and then 2020, you kind of went through this bulking phase where you focused on building more muscle, and that was to prioritize volume training, where you were counting maybe your sets you were doing and trying to get stronger with those exercises. Then it sounds like you went into this challenge, tried to maintain as much as you can in terms of body mass side, and we're talking about muscle mass here, and then trying to lose a little bit of body fat. Is that correct, the approach you took?
That is correct. And then through doing those measurements, so at the beginning of the challenge, I was about 11%, about a week or two before prep week, I was about 11%. So in that first photo, I was around, actually, I probably bulked a little bit more before that photo, because the person that took my body fat said, just eat whatever you want for the next couple of weeks. So I did try to enjoy myself before the 12-week session. So yeah, around 11%. And then I was maintaining mass for about probably the first 6 weeks. So I lost probably maybe a total of 1.5 kilos or 1.4 kilos up to the 6-week mark. But the body fat percentage was only down to about 10.3. So that's when I said, all right, now I'm going to have to tweak things and change things around. And I was probably averaging I know the program said 2,800 to 3,000. I was probably closer to 3,000, if not a little bit more. So then I tweaked that for the last 6 weeks to probably sacrifice a few kilos for dropping body fat percentage.
Yeah. How are you measuring your body fat?
So a friend of mine who's a personal trainer, massage therapist, has his own business. He used it was like a USB port in with sort of like an ultrasound wand.
Okay.
In the program, so they measure 7 points. So it was like bi, tri, scap, under here, axilla, waist, hip.
It's a few spots. Yeah.
Yeah, 7-point reference. Yeah. I never really understood it, because I think most of my measurements when I was getting a little bit frustrated were anywhere between 2% and 10%, but then it must average out and have a higher weighting for around your waist or whatever, I don't know, or your quad.
Yeah.
That's where I tended to hold more.
I think just to kind of super summary the conversation that we had on the forum to people who are listening, when we go through processes of measuring our body fat, it does come with variables and risks of error. And we understand this, trying to be good scientists. But whenever we're measuring something in a point of time, we're taking a snapshot at one time, which can change through lots of different variables, such as how much water we've consumed, what types of foods we've eaten, if we're trained, if we're stressed, if we've had poor quality sleep. And when we're looking within the fitness world at measuring body composition, it gets a little bit tricky. I mean, it almost gets to that point of being, not super important. And what can be an easy way to determine if we are losing body mass is a simple measurement on the scales, such as, how much do I weigh, right? Now, that doesn't tell the full story, because a goal like yours where I go, hey, I want to maintain as much muscle mass as I can, but then also lose body fat. Okay, that gets a little bit tricky because the scales, measure everything. It measures water, gut residue, bone mineral density, muscle in there as well, skin, hair, all the things that are measuring on the scales. So then we go, okay, well, how's the best way to measure this? And you actually said it when you were explaining it before, where you said that you feel stronger now than you were in 2019, right? And that's the best way actually to measure our muscle mass, is through our performance in the gym. So if you're listening to this and you're unsure of, if you're going in that direction of, am I losing body fat and maintaining as much muscle as I can, ask yourself, are the scales going downwards? Yeah, are they going down? Yes, you're losing body mass. Okay, what type of body mass are we losing? Is the performance in the gym consistent, or if anything improving, such as, are you getting stronger? Are you adding more volume? Are you adding more reps? Are you adding more sets? Are you still able to perform in the gym? If you're ticking those boxes, yes, you're gaining muscle or maintaining muscle and then losing body mass. And, taking one look at your photos, Tim's, from 2019 to 2020, you could see a significant growth in muscle. Muscle growth is there, and you could see that. And I think that's why the judges selected you again in the top 10 and the top 3, because you could see the change where you go, well, if you compare these two, the competition is only 12 weeks, but they don't look at anything else that's happening. But when I look at those photos, I go, yeah, 2019 to 2020, Tim, you've gained so much muscle. And that is really impressive to see that you've been diligent in your progress, consistent in your progress in gaining muscle. Now you've gone through your shred phase and you look like a bodybuilder. Like, you look at your back is striated, right? Which suggests that, you're well below 10% body fat. And, if you said to me that I'm 6% body fat, I'd go, yeah, like, I'd believe you. If it's like that's 6 to 8, right? I would say he's 6% body fat. I was looking at your back and I was like, this guy, Tim, he has a Christmas tree on his back. It's Anyway, I digress. But look, I guess I was in awe of your photos. I was very impressed. You've done really well. You should be really proud of that.
I guess before you keep going, when you said that sort of thing about strength and muscle mass, just for other people out there, when I was doing the 2019 challenge, that's something that I noticed towards the back end of the challenge. Not that I was getting any weaker, but I probably plateaued a bit. I couldn't lift any heavier. I couldn't increase any volume. I sort of flatlined, while this one I could generally continually persist in lifting maybe an extra rep or an extra 2.5 kilos here or what have you. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that gets a little bit of a deeper question when we look at maybe you coming back from having some time off with some health issues, going back into training. Maybe you were a beginner again.
Yeah.
Maybe you got lots of those, quote, beginner gains, lots of quick neurological adaptations, which you probably understand. Teaching biology, where our nervous system adapts to that training stimulus very quickly, usually that 6-week mark. But then for our muscle mass to follow along, it takes a little bit longer, where when we go and we tell ourselves realistically, I want to gain muscle. All right, now we're talking about a year-long or more journey, which you've gone through, not a 6-week, okay, I can build up my strength, but then I'm going to hit that plateau because, okay, now it's not all just nervous system. Now we've got to actually push the muscle to adapt, the connective tissue to adapt, the bone to adapt, everything to keep on growing. But look, let's move on to the next question here. I want to talk about challenges. So in 2020, this challenge here, could you speak about some of the challenges that you had to overcome to achieve the amazing result that you did?
I guess probably the first 4 weeks I found pretty straightforward in the sense of, yes, I'm back in challenge mode. Yes, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. But for me, this challenge, because 2019 was getting back into it, because I'd sort of already been training for, the previous 8 months anyway before this challenge, I tended to find, even from week 5 onwards, a grind. Like, it was hard work because I can push myself, but I would say my motivation was low. I wasn't necessarily looking for the end as such because I like training anyway, so I'm going to keep training no matter what. But I was just in the grind. I was just lacking motivation. So that was probably one big challenge. Like, I still got up every single day, did my workout, went to work, all that sort of stuff. But I think where some people may fall over is when you get to that grind, it's your discipline that's going to get you through, not so much motivation. So it's really important that you just try to remain disciplined. And I guess I was fortunate enough that I had been training prior, for 8 months, 10 months leading up, that I'd had built that routine and built that discipline that even when, you're getting up and it's dark and you don't want to wake up the family or anything like that, you just keep pushing through. And I guess when I said that about that 6-week mark, because it was hard, because then I didn't necessarily go into calorie deficit, but because I was having about 3,000, I dropped down to about 2.5. So then I was lacking a bit of energy here and there. And then you have obviously a number of family functions and things like that. So then that ties into, that was a challenging part of what I should and shouldn't consume. And I'm not going to lie to everyone here. Yes, I did have days where if I had a family gathering that I wouldn't necessarily hold back. I wouldn't overeat or overindulge, but I'd have what was on offer. I didn't necessarily say, no, I'm going to bring my own food or anything like that. I'm not that type of person. But yeah, so I guess for me, the main challenges were continuing to drive through those last 6 weeks or so when I sort of wasn't as motivated as probably I was in 2019, because I have been training pretty much most of the year. Just tightening up the diet was the main difference, in the type of training that the Max's program offers is different to what I was doing. And Google Sheets is something that I use every single day for work, so it was quite easy for me. And probably what I didn't do last challenge and what I did do this challenge, which obviously aided in my strength, was actually writing down every single rep that I did. And yeah, I've digressed and gone off on a tangent, but yeah, the main challenge for me probably was motivation. And people might look at my photos and go, yeah, I disagree with what he's saying, but I think what got me through was just purely discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. What you just explained to us is so common. It's so common for us to have all the good intentions. You have all the knowledge, all the right discipline, the perfect environment, the perfect setup. You've got supportive family members, a supportive job, all the good things. But then it just comes to that moment where you genuinely just can't be bothered. You lose the motivation, and that's totally normal and it's totally fine, right? And, those times where you just want to sit on the couch, there's the times when you might want to overindulge, have that ice cream, have the chocolate bar, all the good things, right?
Yes.
And, you go and do those things. Sure, great. And it doesn't necessarily matter that you've done those things, right? I guess what matters more is what you do next, because it ends up being this like negative, positive feedback loop where it starts with you just sitting on the couch, and then you skip a workout, and then you skip the whole training week. And then you go, well, I'll start in 2021 in January, and then it just ends up this negative cycle and you stop doing it, right? So
correct.
I guess what I say to people listening is what you've explained to him is totally normal. And especially through that lull of that maybe week 6 to maybe week 10, where it's just that grind, that honeymoon period is over, where it's all exciting and new, and then it's just chipping away at it. And that's where we lose the most amount of challenges in that period. The Facebook group goes silent, the forum goes silent, right? It's normal. And then week 10, people emerge out of the woods and they're like, I've made it through this grind of that week 6 to 10 mark. And, the only thing that gets you there is discipline. I mean, the next step would be routine. That's really important. Like what you said, discipline, gets you through. It's those times when you don't want to wake up early and go for a walk. It's all right, I'm going to do it because it's what I am now.
Yeah.
I do want to speak a little bit about science. So you seem like a man who wants to do experiments and test things and trial the scientific method, or teaching the scientific method to your students.
Yep.
Can you speak a little bit about how you might have applied some of those methods to the challenge, such as, maybe experimenting with your calorie intake and then the effects on your body, or experimenting with your training and writing things down and collecting data, and then how you might have made changes from that data? Can you speak a little bit about that process?
Yeah, no problem. So obviously a scientific background, I love numbers and data, so they give you so much information. And so I always compare 2019 to 2020 because I learned so much from 2019, but I also learned of what I didn't do in 2019 and implemented into the 2020 program. So in 2019, I didn't take data on reps, and I tried to just recall the weights that I did previously. So I found that with that approach, that I probably never really got stronger in the 2019, even though I probably wanted to, because I just would roughly try and remember, and then you might not necessarily waste a set or two, but you are dedicating a set or two to weight that you could have already done. So this particular challenge, I specifically, and I was starting to do it anyway from the beginning of the year with your templates and some of your programs. I did the old school and just printed it out before you'd had Google templates, and just printed it out and wrote on it. But yeah, I found that from each week, I knew where to start from. And if I finished the last week on a higher weight range, then I just would then use that data and then either start on that particular weight range or know that I can increment to that weight range from towards the beginning. 2019, I didn't necessarily count calories. I just knew the basics from that challenge was proteins, carbs, fats. So in this particular challenge, knowing that I had to get up to 3,000 versus, low 2,000s in the lean and rip challenge, I knew that I probably had to increase my carb intake because they hold a lot of calories compared to, say, protein. So I obviously had to count calories originally, and then myself and my wife do the cooking. So I didn't necessarily do it to the exact calorie. I knew roughly from if I had, for example, 2 cups of brown rice, what it would be, and then 100 grams of chicken, what it would be, and this particular vegetable, like broccoli, how much it will be, and zucchini, how much it will be, so on and so forth. So because I set up an actual table with roughly each meal, the meal that we both like, with everything that's included in it. And I did my own sort of Google Docs where, for example, turkey tacos, how much calories that would be, and chicken fajitas, how many calories that would be, chicken brown rice, how many calories that would be. So then for the first couple of weeks, that was a bit of work setting that up. But then I knew from then on, I knew exactly how much calories was, or roughly approximately how many calories are in each meal. So I use that data then to obviously count my calories and then make the major adjustments around that week 6 mark of how I was progressing. So knowing obviously carbohydrate was giving me all my energy, I also knew that it was a bulk of my caloric intake. So I used that information to then probably increase my protein intake and decrease my carbohydrate intake. And as I said before, probably my initial calories were around that 3,000 mark, if not more. I then took that back probably to mid to low 2,000s. So I used basically all those numbers in training to increase my lifts, and I use the numbers in my diet to then curb whether I would have more or less of particular macros and more or less in total calories for the particular day itself. So that's probably how I use a scientific approach. And then I know you keep referencing the scales, but I'm never big on the scales. I prefer just to look in the mirror. I know it sounds a bit, modest to just look in the mirror, but sometimes you can get fixated by the number on the scale as opposed to what's in the mirror. And so obviously that's not very scientific, but just looking in the mirror was what gave me feedback as to what I needed to work on and areas to look at and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So there's probably they're the main 3 areas that I focused on when coming to, and just, from a scientific point of view, you just question like each week where you're at, where you need to get type thing. As we alluded to before, discipline and all that type of stuff. It's setting those smaller goals. Like everyone banks out to this 12-week, and it's more like when I was use those numbers and things like that, it would be reevaluate after every 5, 6, 7 days, because the weekend was obviously the downtime with family and things like that. That's when you'd reassess, okay, what are we going to have food-wise this week? What's working, what's not so much working, and chop and change there and see how my body responded to different types of carbs and different types of protein and that type of thing.
Yeah. I think you just nailed it, like with that closing sentence, what works for your body, right? And the difficult thing with fitness and with health is that there's so many different approaches that we could take for every single person. Sure, there's some overarching principles that get us, going in the right direction. Like, if you look at a map, we're heading towards the north. But if you wanted to really be specific about where you're going on this map, then we need to take this scientific approach, this experimental approach, and really start to make smart decisions about where we're going. And, if you're listening to this and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, that's okay. I guess the conversation we're having might be that next level, maybe that advanced level where we're talking about, okay, what carbohydrates, what type of carbohydrates am I going to take? What time of day am I going to have those carbohydrates? And then I'm going to time it around my workout so that I could achieve a higher performance in my training session, right? These are the conversations that we have when we're at this peak level, when we want to take it to the next level. But, if we just want to lose body weight, we just want to look good naked, if we want to perform well, if we want to be healthy, okay, it's, really simple principles. All right, eat at an energy deficit, focus on resistance training, focus on getting stronger. We're going to go towards north. We're going to get there, right? But I think the challenge that I see challengers face is they might make a statement such as, I'm not losing weight, it's not working. Or I'm not getting stronger, it's not working. And there should always be a follow-up question. It goes, okay, well, what are you doing? And if you can't answer that, what am I doing? Then we don't have any place to start, right? So if you came to me and you go, I'm not getting stronger on my bench press, I go, okay, well, how are you benching? How many reps are you doing? How many sets are you doing? What weight are you doing? What's your frequency of the bench press? What type of bench press are you doing? If you don't have those answers, then we can't make a plan to take the next step. So if you're listening to this and you're not tracking your training, I'm going to recommend that you start tracking your training, start writing down your sets, your reps, the weights you're using. Because Tim, I was just like you, where I would just train very ad hoc, where I would go to the gym. I'm like, I know how much I bench press. I know how much I deadlift. I'm just going to do, maybe 100 kilos for this many reps and I'll call it a day, right? And then you kind of go through this stagnation where it's just nothing really changes. You're never really pushing yourself, never really aiming to get further. Then when you start writing it down, you go, hey, well, last week I did 100 kilos for 10 reps. And then you kind of look at that number and you go, oh, I reckon I could do 11. And you do your 9 reps, 10 reps, and you do the 11th. And you're like, oh, great, I did 11 reps. That's 1 rep more. Okay, I might not have added more weight on the bar, but I added an extra rep, right? And then the week after, you look at your notes and you go, oh, well, I did 11 reps last time. Let's see if I can get 12. So you do 12 reps. And you're like, oh, great, this is awesome. And then you go, well, maybe I can add 105 kilos on the bar and try that for 10 reps. And we progress that way. If you're not progressing, then you're really just staying where you are, right? I guess I just keep bringing it back, talking about nutrition quickly and talking about body weight. I guess the biggest goal that we see in the challenge is people wanting to lose weight. And the biggest variable linked to weight loss is the weight on the scales, right? And I used to be an advocate of never looking at the scales. I used to say to everybody, don't look at the scales. They don't tell the story. But I guess I've changed my mind over, the past couple of years and go, well, actually, these are a great, easy tool that you can have in your bathroom at your house. You can measure every single day and you can track your body weight progress. And yes, you're right. You can get fixated on that number. It can mess with your head and you go, all right. But that's when we kind of have to separate ourselves from our data and look at the data telling us a story going, okay, why is it every Monday I weigh a kilo heavier than I was on Sunday? What am I doing on Sunday that's causing me to be a kilo heavier? Then you can go, well, on Saturday, I always have a glass of wine. I'm just making this up. I'm not saying that a glass of wine is going to make you a kilo heavier, but maybe that's a routine that you do every Saturday. And then on the Monday, you're a kilo heavier because of maybe something that happened with your water intake that made you a kilo heavier. So then we start to map out this story and we go, okay, well, I can't progress in my weights training because I'm so fatigued because I'm not sleeping well. Do you know how much you're sleeping? Yes or no? Is that reflected in your body weight? Is that reflected in your training? So I guess bringing it back to data, I think it really does give us information to make smart decisions about our training, about our nutrition, about our body composition, about our challenge so that you can take the challenge to the next level. We're still going north, but now we're going very specific to you. Look, let's talk about change. So could you speak a little bit about how maybe your life has changed over the past year? So if you think about yourself in 2019 doing the challenge and then now in 2020, how has maybe your habits, your routine, your mindset, your overall life, how has things changed for you?
It's a very big, broad question. I guess from a training perspective, post 2019 challenge to now, I always had that underlying goal of putting on some size and strength. So from a training perspective, I don't think that has greatly changed in the sense that I began to establish a routine in 2019 and I've continued on with that in 2020. So training wise, it hasn't greatly changed. I know obviously we're interrupted by a pandemic, but for me and schools and in New South Wales, they weren't really closed for too long. And fortunate for me, I do have access to a school gym. It's not a fully decked out gym. However, I still had an opportunity. So for, some challenges out there that would have really struggled through 2020 because I didn't have access to that particular gym apparatus. I did to an extent, but there was obviously a block in 2020 when I didn't. And then I just trained at home, mainly obviously high intensity sort of stuff and body weight sort of stuff. I guess from this challenge and another change is that myself and my wife now have even more meals to cook from that we didn't previously have that are obviously healthy, but they're actually filling. And I think when you first start a challenge, you think bland food, but we could pretty much, not that we want a cookbook or anything, but we could definitely give many tips on what you could include in your meal to make it obviously just as good as any other meal that you have. What else has changed? Obviously, family gets older, and this is more personal with during the challenge, I got discharged from late term effects clinic from the hospital. So that's changed, which is obviously a huge positive for me. So I don't necessarily have to do a number of hospital visits. So that's always positive. I obviously still have to see a doctor once every 6 months to 12 months, a hematologist, but that's obviously something that I always had underlying goals when I first came out of hospital. Then obviously baby steps, but I always had these sort of goals to reach. So for me, that's another change, I guess. And yeah, I guess that I live a pretty routine laden life. So there is obviously a lot of change there, but there's not a huge shift yet because it's only been 12 months and we've been generally socially isolated for that period of time. But yeah, I guess that's what's changed for me, really.
I'm happy that you've been discharged from the hospital, and I'm glad things are moving positively with your health.
Yeah, thank you.
Finally, Tim, I want to talk a little bit about advice. So if someone were to come to you now, and I guess reading your bio, it sounds like a lot of people are asking you questions about fitness and health and gaining muscle and all the good things that come with that. If someone did come to you asking for advice about, I want to get fit, what should I do? Or I'm doing the challenge, what should I do? What advice would you give somebody?
I guess my piece of advice would be, first of all, obviously to keep an open mind. Being a high school teacher, and I don't like alluding to the fact that I went through a life-threatening illness, but I did. And I think one of my strengths through that was I'm a patient person. So people, if they're going to do the challenge, or I say to my students, you need to be patient. I mean, change doesn't just happen overnight. You really need to be patient in the process. So teaching senior students, there'll be some pretty complex stuff that we're going through in class. And I don't know if it's me, I'm older and a little bit more mature, or if I was like this when I was a young teenage boy, but they want a quick fix. And I think a lot of people, when they go to the gym, they want a quick fix. And I say, well, stuff like this doesn't necessarily happen overnight, and you really need to build a routine. You need to be disciplined. You need to have that intrinsic motivation. But when it comes down to it, you just need to be patient. There are going to be times where you do binge or you do go out and have whatever food, but that shouldn't bring you down. Like, it's just a consistent approach to your training, consistent approach to your diet, and showing that discipline. And if you're patient, and I'm talking, months and months and months, if you're patient, it will come to fruition. You just can't get results overnight. And it's, as I said, I keep alluding, because I'm a teacher, but I keep alluding to my senior students. So we're building towards a final exam, which is 12 months away. Like, if you don't understand what I've just said in class now, don't fret. We're going to keep revisiting it. We're going to keep changing. And we talked about going back to question why or what you're doing. That's what we need to do, obviously in school, but also in training. You need to question what are we doing? What do we need to go back to the surface? And the surface is what? And if you understand the surface, you can move on to things that are deeper. And if you can get to the deep level, then you can transfer and apply it everywhere, type thing. So I guess my major piece of advice is you need to be patient. Otherwise, if you're not patient, you're probably going to self-sabotage and give up or drop the ball and not pick the ball up again. And I can give you many cliches, but that's about it.
I love that. I love that so much. And I think it's interesting, we run a 12-week challenge, and I guess we kind of promote this short, sharp training program where we're trying to transform our body over 12 weeks. However, when we look at someone like yourself, you've embodied this delayed gratification process, this kind of like long-term vision process where you've done one challenge, you've done well, but then you kind of had a bigger goal where you go, hey, I want to gain some muscle, right? I want to put on some muscle mass. I want to really transform my entire lifestyle, my livelihood, right? Your body is just completely changed. So this advice that you've given is something that you embody right now. And I respect that so much, where you've gone, hey, it's not just a 12-week quick fix. This is now a lifestyle, and it's something that's taken 12 months. It'll probably take another couple of years for us to continue to see some mass growth, some muscle growth, so that you can, become even better. And, bringing it back to looking at your photos from 2019 to 2020, really highlighted the patience, discipline that you put in to achieve the amazing result that you did. So I love that advice that you gave everybody, and I think you're an embodiment of that.
Thank you.
Tim, I just want to thank you so much for donating some of your time again to be on the Challenge podcast. I'm so proud of the effort that you put in, and it's absolutely amazing and inspiring. And I'm sure that you've inspired so many people within our communities online, and then also within your social circles and the people that you interact with, which I love when people are the embodiment of fitness and promote fitness to everybody. So I love that so much. So mate, thank you so much. And thank you for being part of the Challenge podcast.
And no problem, Steve. And here's a cliche one for you. And I wrote it in my final one to all the challenges out there. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Thanks, Steve.
I love that. Thanks for listening, guys. If you like the show, share it with a friend or leave us a review on iTunes to help us spread the good word. See you next time.